Welcome to the InteropNow podcast, where it's all about health data interoperability and the technology solutions that will transform your business. We bring you the information you need to find the right solutions to exceed federal requirements, improve patient satisfaction, and increase your bottom line. We will talk to leading industry experts about using APIs to unleash, repurpose, and scale healthcare data. And now your host, interoperability maven, Sandy Vance.
Welcome to the InteropNow podcast. Today we are talking to Shane McNamee, MD, who just joined Smile CDR as the Chief Medical Information Officer. Dr. McNamee is no stranger to healthcare technology standards used to propel interoperability. He has served the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs as a clinical lead on health information exchange initiatives, and since 2018 has been working in the private sector as a CMIO. He serves on the IHE USA board and was recently awarded the Fed Health IT 100 Award, nominated by his peers for driving change and advancement in the federal health information technology and consulting market. Boy, that's a mouthful. Congratulations on that award, Shane, and thank you for being here.
It's a joy to join you here this morning, Sandy. I've been really excited to talk to you this morning.
Good. Well, let's dive in. So tell me the story of how you got involved with health IT standards.
I was completely backwards. I didn't mean to some degree. I was a doctor, a white coat doctor, years ago as a polytrauma rehabilitation physician during the wars. I ran a rehabilitation unit at the VA and helping those with traumatic brain injury and amputations and spinal cord injuries put their lives back together. And well, the data wasn't flowing through the pipes very well for the service members as they came to us from the military. And then, into the VA and then back home again, and then back into the military and around and around and around. And we needed it. So when service members would come in, it was critical to know, where they were at and what was happening with them. And very early in this project, there was a group of us, call us doctors and brilliant nurses and researchers and technologists. And we figured out we needed to build the next great thing, and we tried that multiple times, and they worked very well. And the things that worked most were the things that were built on standards, because they were easiest to integrate, they were easiest to bring value up in your organization as quickly as possible, and then also make sure in the future that you're also thinking less about integration with the next device. At least that's how we think about it here at Smile with data fabric architectures. But during that time, as a white coat doctor, I thought standards were for suckers. I didn't think standards would help us necessarily because, we're creating the next great thing, and only the next great thing can fix this. So, Sandy, it turns out I was wrong.
Shane, can you talk about how the standards played a role? And so I'd imagine you were bringing data from several systems into a portal or a viewer of some sort. So, what standards did you use? If you don't, that's okay. And what did that look like from the perspective of data movement?
Sure. So, critical, and I'm an old school believer in syntactic, semantic, and then process interoperability approach, right? First, it's just simply flowing the data into the eyeballs of the clinicians and the patients themselves and researchers and whatnot, so you can pick through it. It's the first thing you do is you bring it up to the screen, and the aggregation of data from multiple systems. And at this time, it was, the care pathway that we had lined out was from cash units. So surgical units in the field from Kandahar and other Bagram Air Force Base, all the way through via the DoD to Landstuhl in Germany, and then over to Walter Reed and Bethesda and all the military hospitals, and then all the VA hospitals, and then as many of the private sector hospitals that we can connect with to bring the data forward of these individuals. So that's the first piece, is just tying it all together. But when you get to that second layer is once you have all of this data coming in, right? There's so much noise, Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to read it and look at it and pick out patterns as a clinician, as a doctor, let's say, you're trying to pick out patterns, and there's so much noise. It's so hard to find the signal. So that's one of the first problems that you actually run into once you finally have a ton of data coming in. If that data is dirty or unhygienic,
no analytics on it.
Yeah, or it's not even just the analytics, is that you have to put it back together again because they're in different languages. Can I give you an example on that? I think it's a neat one. So really early on, we brought all this data together in 2006, 2007, across the VA and DoD. We brought all the vital signs up first, right? Because those were critical to determine over time. And they said, what's the next thing you want to do with it? I said, well, we want to graph the vital signs so we can see temperature changes and blood pressure changes over time. And did those things change at the same time in the past that may indicate something's wrong with the brain? And they said, that's great, but we can't do that. And I said, well, you're technologists working with magic computers. You can't make a line of a blood pressure. And they explained to me that no, because the VA and DoD save blood pressures in different ways. So the VA, I believe, it's one way or the other. VA saved it in two numbers, your systolic over your diastolic. The Department of Defense and the legacy system saved it as one. And when you brought those together, they didn't make a graph, and you couldn't harmonize it well enough on the fly and make it safe for people. So those are some of the things that you start to deal with. You have to really then start bringing forward tools that abstract information off of this great data stream and bring it forward to humans, to clinicians and patients and caregivers and payers and providers and everyone else. That's, what's happening. Something bad is happening. And there's, tremendous ROI in all those different pieces. But that's what open standards do. They just allow the data at this level to flow very, very cleanly in an event-driven fashion. To me, that's the ability to actually raise the signal, not just hear the signal, right? Not just put the stethoscope on the big chunk of data that clinicians are trying to do, but actually raise that signal up for them to see that it's an emerging risk that, hey, maybe you want to check on this before something bad happens.
Absolutely. Do you think that the fire standard in particular it helps us to that level?
I think without a healthcare data standard, we will never fix it. And I think FHIR is the right healthcare standard for data at the right time, with the most people working on it, to try to make it the thing that works best for the most people in a future state. So it's an imperfect thing. I hate to say it, it's created by humans, right? And an attempt to pull all of this data together to make it make sense, not just to humans, but so machines can read it, so humans don't have to read all of it. We need one. Every other industry that's like ours has gone through this already, and it happens. So FHIR
When you say that, do you mean the transition to APIs in general?
Yeah,
yes.
Data-driven APIs, right? So we look at this kind of interoperability timeline that other industries have gone through before us, right? Sandy, we all like to joke that, or say that healthcare is 5 to 15 years behind other industries, right? In IT, and all of us geeks get together and we chuckle when we say that. Turns out that that's a roadmap if you flip it around. And you can see the things that other industries that are like healthcare, that have interoperability problems, and they've come up with solutions, have done. And you go through a data standardization piece, you go through a knowledge standardization piece, and then you go through a process standardization piece down your value chain. And then you hook in as many tools as you want, be it AI, be it other things, flow as much data into it as you want from as many different sources and out to as many different sources as you can. And, a data fabric that is open and truly open really enables this and compels this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the open source piece of this is an interesting aspect. So Smile CDR has been so fiercely committed to the HL7 fire standard and has really helped along the way in the development of that standard in a big way. And I know that you guys launched commercially in 2016, but even before that was Happy Fire, which is sort of the most downloaded and maybe even the most complete, I would say, open source implementation of the HL7 fire standard that many, many people are using as a foundation to their fire implementations. Can you talk a little bit about what it means to have this sort of open source Happy Fire product as part of the larger Smile CDR portfolio of commercial products?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something I think our industry really needs to start understanding, right? That open standards are critical. Fire driving change between payers and providers and everything else. But there's this whole other concept of open source technologies. And it's, again, you know me, I came from a white coat doctor who never wanted to know any IT all the way here, and I understand it. And it isn't that challenging, right? So open source technology essentially is really a business decision that organizations make. They say that when I'm bringing this thing forward to the marketplace and I'm building this and I'm putting our resources into it, and when it's something as critical as a data fabric that runs between all the places, hopefully in the future, that we go to get healthcare as a patient, it's critical that it works and connects to everything across. And it's challenging and it's expensive, but it's a business model. And essentially what it is he says, as we take this forward and create this, our intellectual property, a large part of it, we're going to give away to the world upstream and a whole bunch of people to get into it and see what they can do with it to create value in their local, regional, national communities to start to build these virtuous cycles between payers and providers. So when you choose open source, you'll hear me saying choose open a lot, right? That's both open standards and that's open source technologies. What you have there then is the effort of all of us, or anybody who chooses to come into an open source space, to build value together in the future in a sustainable manner that lives long after any of us do. And that's what open source technology is. So being able to join a company like Smile CDR, who's led the way, in my mind, from a data delivery perspective, in terms of the speed of the data, in terms of the volume of the data, in terms of the standards of the data, and be able to structure it then on that standard side. And then you multiply that by the force of an open source community that's huge at this point. Sandy, it's really exciting because we have a potential leverage here to actually start to change things to flow healthcare in a better way for all of us. So it's super exciting to be part of.
Absolutely. So when a provider organization says, hey, does it make more sense for me to point my developers to Happy Fire or for us to start working with Smile CDR? What are the pros and cons of each?
Well, the best part about it is they have choices, right? And that's really what we're trying to help them with, right? So I think about it as different types of people buying it for different things, right? And I've on top of being a patient, I've been a provider and a payer and a researcher and all these other things. And so I've worked in these roles. So you think about it from an innovation perspective. So there might be some organizations out there, even listening today, are saying, hey, wait a minute, we're hearing about this. We know this is coming down the pike. We want to be able to use this in a really simple way, very quickly. And we've got some developers inside of our shop who can string this thing up. They may have already brought it up. And, frankly, at Smile, we love it when people download Happy and connect it and see what they can do the first time through, right? So some people's journey into our ecosystem and into our community is in that regard, right? Is a, hey, listen, got a bunch of smart people. We have something that we think we can fix. Let's not pay somebody else. Let's not get contractors in here and all the challenges. Let's just do it, right? Go for it. We think it's a great idea. We can help point you towards the community. The requirements that you come up with beautifully in the future are going to come back in, and you're going to see a package come into the future that works better. But then there's also some buyers out there and consumers out there who want to do it now, right? They either have pressing needs from operational perspectives. These are payers and providers who are exchanging patient healthcare data around the full trip of interoperability and healthcare journeys. And some of them want to bring it up right away, right? Those are the folks that we recommend go to, a managed or supported service more quickly. And generally speaking, their data, legacy data is much more complicated. So, what I would say to that class of folks is get on that early, right? Really start to understand your data streams. Contact us or an organization like us well ahead of the time that you think that you need the thing.
Yes, absolutely. Get started earlier. It's been interesting to see as the payer regulations that come out from CMS
right
have mandated that everybody get on this. And I feel like payer organizations may have started a little late in the process of trying to implement some of these FHIR APIs. And so then what happens ultimately is it's a supply demand thing. There are only so many organizations that can do this work. So as a provider organization who is coming up against the ONC interoperability rules in the summer of 2022, it's really important to be paying attention to this now, because come March is not the time to start your journey towards transitioning to APIs that are going to meet those G10 rules. So you and I had talked before, and you said you think that Smile CDR is going to bend the cost curve with event-driven architecture. And so you've talked a little bit about that today and the process side of things. Can you share the Smile approach to that mission with our audience and talk a little about how it will help provider organizations mitigate risk to have a data fabric or this type of accessibility?
It's a great question, and I think it's the one that we're struggling most with in the industry right now, which is if you take our payers and providers who are now really, truly beginning to work better and together with FHIR and these things flowing in different ways, what do you actually do with the data once you've got it, right? It's this concept of, okay, FHIR, great, we've got it, we're in. What now, right? How do I deliver value quickly? And what we do is we step back and for a minute and say, what are we doing here mostly, and how have other industries done this? We're identifying risk as early as possible as it emerges. Hopefully we're predicting it, right? The risk itself, or when something happens, if your information technology is tuned correctly, you can hear it early and you can prevent future disease and damage and cost, right? And that's the cost curve, right? So we start with event-driven data. Let's just imagine a world in which all of your data coming into your provider organization from all of your feeds is coming through in a method that is trustful and reliable, and it's there. If you can detect risk early, you prevent the rapid rise of cost and human suffering that's inevitable in the disease cycle. And that's what clinicians want most.
So for Smile CDR, so if I'm a CIO and I already have my EMR and I already have these other systems and services, what's the value add of engaging with Smile CDR? Like what tactically?
Yeah. So the question is how many? First question is how many of those things do you have, right? And chances are in modern provider healthcare organizations, it isn't one EMR or one EHR. more likely your clinicians have between 3 and 7 applications open at any given time, and they're going through all those, pulling data out of there. And that's incredibly inefficient, challenging, and really slows down your healthcare operations. So the first question that we ask, and we at Smile like to listen, honestly, more than we talk when we come in, because we know it's really challenging. The first question is, how many systems do you have? And as you bring that data through, what are the things that you can do then with it to bring value to your organization almost immediately? One of those things is bending the cost curve, right? So identifying emerging patient risks early. So think about a diabetic whose kidneys are just starting to fail from dehydration and different things. If you catch that in the right period of time and you give them a $100 bag of IV fluid, you can save them from a lifetime of dialysis, which is expensive. The social determinants are off the chain. You don't go back to work again. And, there's all kinds of human suffering. So the first thing that I recommend that folks do, right, is get your data up, get your governance model, get your clinicians and your researchers and other people say, hey, this is good. We trust this data. And that's really the first stage that we hit, is that trust stage, because we don't trust the data now because it's coming from all these different directions. And then the next thing I do is I look at my quality metrics. I look at my HEDIS metrics and other things from the NCQA and say, where am I doing well? Where am I doing poorly? If I were to bring forward early indicators, early system warnings for later failure in these HEDIS measures, what would I point it towards, right? And I develop very simple risk-based signaling, and I develop you look to develop a core team there that understands how to use it across your organization to catch into this. And by doing that, you deliver risk, early and often. So that's the first one, is bend the cost curve, take your event-driven data, tune it very simply, don't go crazy with it, tune it very simply to a couple of problems across your organization and let it work. And it will over time. The other one that I think that people really should be focusing on right now is the full trip of the interoperability process. So call it a bundle or a set of purchased care pieces. Say it's a knee replacement that someone needs. It's the pre-op care, it's the op care, it's the post-op care, it's the I'm a rehab doc, so I always think about the therapy and the PT and everything else that goes with it, but from front to end, and start to think about and start to align your systems in your facility. Somebody's making billing and resource management, others are quality, towards those journeys with your most common payers and other partners in your community. The thing that we're most excited about with Smile is you can see the virtuous loop emerge early on, that, oh, wait a minute, these journeys that we had between, say, my provider organization, and we have all these different places where we have to connect with payers and what have you. Once it starts to work quickly, it works really fast. It's way more reliable, right? And it gives you data early on in the cycle to be able to fix things before they're too terribly broke.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Shane, is there anything else you'd want to add?
Yeah, there is, actually. I don't think that this is all that hard, Sandy. I think that we anticipate that because this is healthcare and medicine, that it's somehow different than everything else that happens out there. And it isn't, and it shouldn't be. And there are complexities, regulations, and other things, and we should be able to obviously solve these. But realistically speaking, as a patient now, I'm sick and tired of buying my healthcare like this. I wouldn't buy shoes like this. I wouldn't buy a house like this. I wouldn't buy an airline ticket like this. It's the only industry that I know where when you walk forward as a consumer, you have no idea what the cost of the thing is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You have no real choices. You may have one choice. If you're lucky and you work for it, you can find another choice. right? You don't know the overarching quality of it, and you can't put your arms around it at all. We have to start to look at the healthcare buyer's journey, right? From beginning to end, from start to finish, around the entire process with the knowledge and the data that are in there, in beneficial
Absolutely.
patterns. And that's it, right? So we have to, and this is my ask for folks listening out there, demand more. As a patient, as a consumer, as the most important thing in healthcare, demand more. And when people say that's great, but how do you fix it? Say use open standards and open source technologies and make
Right.
those choices in the marketplace, because down the line, you're going to be so happy that you did.
It seems so absurd, doesn't it, when we think about the level of information that we would require in any other situation.
Right.
If our bank told us that we had to wait until they thought about it to let us know if we could move our money, we
Right.
would not accept that. Yet
Right.
with healthcare, we go in for services all the time that we have literally no idea what they cost. And we sign up, and this movement, I think for the last, I don't know, 10 years at least, where we're like, patients need to take more responsibility for consuming healthcare and stop using the emergency department for, things that aren't critical, aren't necessary. And so we've
Sure.
moved to urgent cares to try to make it more reasonable from a cost perspective, but there's still no patient cost transparency. We have no idea what these things cost. And so I think that's where you're going with that. And that's sort of my hope for the future too, is that this should be managed by the consumer, and it should be manageable by the consumer. And the only way we're going to get there is through making the data available, giving them the information they need.
Yeah, and to carry it forward, you go back to the banking piece. Can you imagine if you went to your bank here today and you say, I want to transfer X number of dollars to this other thing, and you had to wait for, I don't know, 2 hours until they got all your money, i.e. printed off your medical records, and then carried that money to the place that, to the new bank or the new thing that you were transferring it to, and asking, where's the right person, finding the right person, getting them to intake that and put that on their ledger on the other side, right?
It's just wild, isn't it?
It sounds foolish.
It sounds like 1985 is what it sounds like, Shane.
Right. And so it's actually one of my favorite standard stories. I'm a standards geek, you know this, right? The Swift banking transfer obliterated that. It allowed for international transactions across all, because there was a data standard and a security standard and a governance standard built into a very simple thing. Multiply that out against the complexity of healthcare, and then you can also see the value improvement once we actually start to use it in an effective, efficient fashion.
Yeah. So tell me, who's the ideal Smile CDR customer?
We love working with organizations that are looking in their local area, their regional area, and even in their national area to say, where are our patients and revenue flowing from payers and from other partners, and how do we more tightly align ourselves to those payers or providers that are in our network on the other side? How do we tighten the data pipes there, so people can start forgetting about data? Wouldn't it be amazing to go to work in 2023 and what you're not thinking about every day is, how do I pull my healthcare data together and hook them to my most valuable partners along the revenue streams that are critical for my organization? We're looking for folks like that, who are really looking at the interspace to say, what we need to do here, and what ONC, I think, and other regulations are doing, is trying to heal healthcare by the fact to say payers and providers ultimately shouldn't be completely separate organizations and separate marketplaces with separate data languages. An HL7 here, an X12 here. It's nice to see them finally meet with FHIR. So, we're looking for partners like those across those ecosystems. We're also looking for partners that have great informatics shops, right? The folks that you're going to know who know how to use this data the best are probably in your organization already. I used to be one of those guys. And they know where the hot spots are. They know where the minimum viable product could come in and really change things. So we're looking to get engaged with along those lines. But the other piece that we're always looking for as well, and I think it's important to mention, is we're looking for partners, technology solution partners for the things that are coming down the pike, like prior authorization, like price transparency. We're going to have and we have amazing data pipes that are configured for those now. We as an organization, Smile, choose not to build all the little tools down the line, but rather enable the success of those partners in the market space. So we're also looking for partner organizations. Could they be providers or payers that have built their own things and they need better event-driven real-time data to actually get about doing the work that needs to get done.
Awesome. All right. Well, so let's put your website out there. What is your web address? How do people find you to get more information about Smile CDR?
SmileCDR.com. It's real easy. Jump on LinkedIn, follow us there. Check it on Twitter. It's all about better global health. It's all about open standards. And it's all about, at the end of the day, choosing open when you make these critical decisions about the next generation of your healthcare data.
Awesome. Shane, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Sandy.
Hey, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, you have to come check out InteropNow at Vive. Through interactive demonstration, we will take all the concepts and products from the podcast and help you see in real time how to apply them to meet your goals. Come learn how to take your business to the next level with the premier interoperability solutions in healthcare. Find more information at www.viveevent.com.